Hey guys, John B here with PhoneArena, and this is our review of the Red Hydrogen One. Hyping a product does well to generate interest, especially when it's something so different and ambitious. We can argue that the Red Hydrogen One has been going through a roller coaster ride ever since it was first revealed back in July 2017, seeing that multiple delays kept on pushing back its release. However, that inevitable release is finally here. Today's trends tend to favor phones with skinny frames, lighter bodies, and slick aesthetics that charm people. Well, that's not what the Red Hydrogen One's all about, as it towers over today's smartphones, favoring utility more than aesthetics. While on the surface it may appear bulky with its design, the aluminum Kelvin frame makes it feel as though it's built like a tank. The scallop grips around its sides indicates again the phone's preference for utility with its design. We do like how it's incredibly well built, one that doesn't have the same kind of fragilness that accompanies today's all-glass constructed phones. Despite its tank-like construction, there's no water-resistant properties with its design. Other standouts with the design include its power button, which has an embedded fingerprint sensor, you have dual front-firing speakers, a headphone jack, a dedicated camera shutter key, and one really useful SIM microSD card slot that's really easy to access because you don't need a pin tool to get to it. Just like Motorola and Essential, Red is hoping to capture interest with the modular aspect of the Hydrogen One, which is achieved through the pin connectors that are located in the back of the phone. Now, very little has been revealed in regards to the lineup we can expect to see the Red Hydrogen One supporting, but only one has been previewed, the Cinema Camera Module. Even though we haven't checked it out for ourselves yet, it's a module that enthusiasts are sure to be excited about because it's mentioned to allow users the ability to attach lenses from Canon, Nikon, Sony, Leica, and other brands directly to the phone. This is no doubt unique in the space, but it's something that diehard camera enthusiasts are sure to be receptive about when it comes to fruition. For now, the pins on the back of the Red Hydrogen One will remain there unused until we get word from Red about the mods. The Red Hydrogen One's biggest standout has to be the 4-view holographic display it's rocking. Naturally, the first thing to come to mind after briefly checking it out were the glasses-free 3D glasses we saw in phones like the HTC Evo 3D and LG Optimus 3D several years back. Not surprisingly, that trend was relatively short-lived, mainly because it was more of a novelty than anything else. Knowing that history, you may be wondering how the 5.7-inch Quad HD 4-view holographic display is any better. Well, for starters, it's really cool seeing it in action for the very first time, when images, video, and other content created specifically in this format pop out on the phone's holographic display, which is able to achieve this illusion of depth without the need for glasses. Although it definitely brings the wow factor when you show it off to people, it's still novel at best for the majority of users. But this niche feature will certainly strike a nerve for those in the VR or 360-degree community. As for the display's actual characteristics, it's not one to really catch our attention over other displays because of its extremely cold color temperature, inaccurate color reproduction, and visible distortion at angles. The only bright spot is its strong 519 nit output, which makes it visible under direct sunlight. Red doesn't meddle all that much with the interface, saying that's running a stock Android 8.1 Oreo experience out of the box. Now, the only point of contention for some users may be the bloatware that AT&T adds, which are simply some of the carrier's apps. Beyond that, anyone familiar with the stock Android 8.1 Oreo experience will find themselves at home right away. Red indeed does package some of its own apps that provide relevant content to really encapsulate users. Take for example the Hydrogen Network app, which offers several videos, movies, and short clips that have been tailored to showcase the 4-view holographic display. There's also the Red Leah Loft, which is a portal where we can download apps and games that have been optimized to support the display. We tried out Asphalt 8, Flippy Knife, and Modern Combat 5, which all translate smoothly to the holographic display. Due to the phone's long development and numerous delays, there was no working around to switching out the processor to match its contemporaries. It's running the Qualcomm Snapdragon 835 coupled with 6GB of RAM, which suffices enough even now for all the basic things, but the chipset is without question dated at this point. When you think how just about every major flagship is accompanied with the Snapdragon 845, having last year's hardware doesn't do much to justify its worth over those options. Yes, the phone's performance is still responsive, but it doesn't offer the same kind of split-second responses we've seen in phones like the OnePlus 6, Galaxy S9, and the new Google Pixels. Our particular model is boasting 128GB of internal storage, a generous tally no doubt, especially when there's expansion courtesy of its micro SD card slot. We really like this implementation because you don't need a SIM ejector tool to access it, so you could really swap it out relatively easy. One peek at the back of the phone, it's almost undeniable that there's a huge focus on its cameras. Speaking of that, yes, it's fashioned with a dual camera system in the rear, but it's also rocking a pair around the front as well. The rear combo breaks down to a pair of 12.3 megapixel stereo cameras, while the front shooters are a pair of 8.3 megapixel cameras. As you expect with this dual camera implementation, it allows for portrait shots, both the front and the back. However, the neato factor here is in how the 4-view holographic display takes the content and delivers those holographic views. When we switch to the 4-view mode, the holographic display kicks in to provide us with a real-time look at the composition. In our experience, there are certain factors that contribute in achieving the best results with depth. In some instances, they come out amazing, but in others, the feeling of depth is lacking. So what's the verdict on the camera's performance? Well, we're a bit disappointed by it. Yes, those 4-view holographic photos are cool and slick, which when they're viewed as 2D images, they're lacking fine details and often soft in tone. If you're looking for better results, simply just stick to the 2D mode because the results are a bit more tolerable. When there's ample lighting, photos come out with more detail and neutral tone colors. However, HDR adds a bit of improvement by boosting the shadows, saturating the colors, and adding more contrast. The only downside, however, is that it takes an even longer amount of time to capture HDR shots. The front-facing camera actually performs rather well when the conditions are suitable. Not only does it capture some solid details, but it's complemented by its strong dynamic range and sharpening. Even portrait shots manage to do nicely as well, as the cameras are able to distinguish our face from the background, allowing it to properly add the appropriate amount of blur around the edges of our face. Sadly, there is nothing pretty to look at with the camera's performance under low light. As predictably so, it results in very muddy looking images void of detail. It also struggles with dynamic range too, seeing that highlights are often blown out to the point that details are absent. Furthermore, there's just too much noise in the shadows when there's zero lighting around. So when your brand is renowned for capturing cinema-grade video, you're going to be scrutinized a little bit more. Sadly, the Red Hydrogen 1 fails to deliver any substance with its video recording performance. Even with this maximum shooting resolution of 3840 by 2160, the visuals appear extremely soft. They lack any sort of detail, and even though it seems like it does offer stabilization, it does appear a bit more on the jittery side. It doesn't help either when videos seem to be generally underexposed and colors are subdued. Over on the audio side, the mic seems to struggle to focus on voices, and we made sure to not cover up the microphones, but it still sounded somewhat distorted. And as you'd expect, things don't get any better under low light situations, as the Red Hydrogen 1 produces muddy videos with a heavy presence of noise. Now, to tell you the truth, the entire thing makes for a very forgettable experience. The option to shoot in 4-view is there as well, and has a maximum resolution of 3840 by 2160. Now, the nice thing about this is that you get a real-time preview of what the composition looks like, so it's able to deliver a believable level of depth in the scene. Again, the novelty of shooting in this mode is something we appreciate, but the unfortunate thing is that you really can't share these videos with anyone else. It's only on the Red Hydrogen 1's holographic display. And yes, it's cool how some things pop out in these videos, but it's really tough to discern the actual video's quality because of the distortion that comes into play with 4-view mode. For all the notoriety, it's rather disappointing that the Red Hydrogen 1 can't even deliver average results with its video recording performance. Sure, the 4-view holographic capture is neato looking with its ability to define depth in the video, but it's still a novel feature at best for now. When it comes to multimedia consumption, the Red Hydrogen 1 definitely impresses, specifically for the 4-view holographic mode because videos and photos do pop very nicely, which is even made better knowing that we can view the screen for longer periods of time without feeling fatigued. And yes, you don't need special glasses to view this. Over on the audio side, you do have the option for this audio 3D effect. It applies this spatial effect with the built-in speakers, but the overall volume output sounds a little bit on the weak side. In comparison, it gets a little bit louder when it's off, reaching a peak output of 73.3 decibels, but it's still by and large underperforming against the competition. Then again, we'll give them kudos for continuing to employ a headphone jack. If there's one thing going right for the Red Hydrogen 1, it's without question its long-lasting battery life. That's attributed to its massive 4500 mAh battery, which in our day-to-day use manages to achieve almost a couple days with a full charge. By the end of the first night, it was still hovering around the 45% mark. In our battery benchmark test, it reaffirms our real-world experience, as it topped out at 11 hours and 10 minutes, easily breezing past most of the flagship competition. Recharging is also speedy using the included charging adapter, which takes 129 minutes to fully recharge back to full capacity. Now, due to the aluminum construction of the phone, not only does it lack any sort of water-resistant properties, but it also means that it doesn't have wireless charging as an option. Despite the distortion that's evident in voices through the earpiece, it's still okay enough to handle phone conversations. Volume is at least potent through the earpiece, which makes it still easy to discern voices, while on the other end of the line, our callers didn't face any major issues in trying to make us out. However, the lackluster volume output of the speakerphone pretty much prevents it from being used in noisy conditions. Those looking to pick up the Red Hydrogen one will have to shell out some serious dough to snag it. In fact, the total cost is going to be close to $1,300. Now, we're all accustomed to seeing smartphones in the $1,000 range, but they all generally have proven to be well-rounded performers. That's not particularly the case here with the Red Hydrogen one, which for a general smartphone can't even come close to competing against the current competition in the space. Red's ambitious approach undoubtedly needs to be applauded regardless, just because they're daring enough to take a gambit on innovation, even when everyone else has seemingly settled on following the trends. Indeed, the 4-view holographic display and camera capture is unique in the space, but just like the short-lived 3D displays and 3D recording that smartphones went through several years ago, it's a novelty that quickly wears off. However, the Red Hydrogen one does possess one imposing feature that may potentially win the hearts and minds of enthusiasts, and that's the cinema camera module. While most consumers may not be enchanted by this, we certainly know that camera buffs are digging the prospect of being able to attach their existing lenses to this phone. However, we still don't have a direct time frame for its release, nor a price point at that, which means yet another substantial out-of-pocket cost to the user. Still, it's something we feel that has more purpose in the long run than the 4-view holographic display. Unless you're a die-hard cinema buff, you may want to better invest your money elsewhere. And that is it for a review of the Red Hydrogen one. If you guys want to learn more about it, you can check out our website, PhoneArena.com. This is John V, signing off.